The role of accessibility and the quality of life is absolutely essential. If you had broken your leg and you were on crutches and there was 20 steps in front of you, I doubt you're going to be able to come to work. So accessibility is for everybody. When you make a building accessible, meaning you add a ramp, the people who are delivering stuff can use the ramp. If you put in curb cuts, women who have children, small children and a pram, it gives them accessibility. So accessibility is not limited to a person with a disability, because the barriers can be barriers for anybody who is able-bodied. So if you build something from scratch and you make it accessible, meaning wider doors, lower lights, washrooms that you can maneuver a piece of equipment into, who knows, down the road in your home, you're going to break your leg. And where are you going to sleep? Or you get sick and you can't manage to go up the stairs. Where are you going to sleep? So all of those accommodations. And in the UK, nowadays, you're going to build a house. It has to be built so it's accessible to people who use wheelchairs. Everything that is required is built in, which is a lot cheaper than doing it after the fact. And then that way you have inclusion and everybody, and it's not a big deal. And that's the way it should be. But some areas, so the other thing is this, you need to work the system. Before, at the city, if you wanted a curb cut, they were done on a one request basis. So somebody builds a group home, you get the curb cuts. Somebody now is using a wheelchair, they would put in a request, you might get a curb cut. There would be X amount of money in the budget, and once it was gone, that was gone. So you weren't going to get another one there. Now it's a lot more simpler if you can get it into the policy and into the system. So the city, now the policy is that if you are doing any repairs on a pavement at the end, not in the middle, at the end, then when you're finished, it will be ramped automatically. So the ramps go in automatically wherever they're doing repairs. The other thing you need to keep in mind is if you have crosswalks, right? You need one to get off, one to get on, one to get on, one to get on, or off or on. Otherwise, you can wheel all the way down a block to the end, you can't get off. Unless there's somebody had a driveway, that had access. Otherwise, in a ramp, you've had it. So you go to a park, you can't get on the grass because sometimes the verges are like that. So that means that the city parks and rec need to know to put in a ramp at various suitable places so you can access, because you might want to go there with your children and go to sandpit or go for a picnic on the grass. How are you going to get on there? You're not. So you need to know where you're going to put them. And then you need to put your parking for wider stalls, right? You have to be realistic too, because if it's a small shopping center and they've got maybe 5 parking stalls, right? Then if you can have one that's wider, then that's where a van would go with a lift, or a car, where the door has to open extensively. Whereas if you, and so then others can be designated for parking, but it doesn't have to be wide, because not everybody who is disabled, so it's the proximity then to the doors, so they don't have to walk. The other thing is to walk behind cars. I always feel a wee bit apprehensive in case all of a sudden it backs up and doesn't see me, because you're kind of short. So, there's just some stuff, just plain old common sense. I don't think but it's interesting when you come to curb cuts, because if you have it the way I would like it, which is totally to the ground, then it doesn't suit people who are blind, or they have to be able to put the stick to know they're at the end. So you need a little lip there, right? So you still have to do a wee bit of a wheelie. So sometimes the requirements conflict with, and like I say, it's not one size fits all. So you have to compromise, and you need to be prepared to do that. I mean, if it's an old building, you're hardly going to make it accessible. It's an old building. It wasn't meant to be accessible. However, policy again. If it's over a certain, if the renovations are over a certain amount of money, then you have to include accessibility, which I think is fair enough. But I personally don't expect to get into everything. You know, I just don't. There's not always a space to accommodate a washroom. But however, businesses, if the place isn't accessible, meaning mostly the washroom, then my family is not going there to eat.
Right.
So they miss out on not one human being, one person, it's a whole group of people. And if you do that often enough, well, you've lost a large marketing segment. Again, it's just plain old common sense.